From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. Do you remember when you were a teenager and you thought all the adults were crazy? Well, it turns out you were right. Everybody's nuts, but especially the people in charge. As John Lennon once infamously said, I think the people in charge of the government are insane people. And even the normal ones, people like you and me. We have our own brand of insanity going. But at least we're good, decent people. I don't think you'd murder anybody, would you? You're not a murderer. With the recent State of the Union and the recent headlines, it's just becoming more and more clear that we were right about the world when we were teenagers. Everybody's crazy. Nobody's got any answers. And most especially, the people in charge. Now, as a teenager, the people in charge of you were your parents and your teachers, primarily. And then when you had your first part-time job in a fast food joint or any number of summer jobs, then it was your boss who was crazy, didn't know anything. For some of us, we had a religious upbringing. So there were preachers, priests, nuns. They were all nuts. I'm assuming, for the sake of this conversation, that you had a relatively normal childhood. And if you did, you understand what I'm talking about. These people are idiots. And they're trying to tell me how the world works, trying to tell me how to live, trying to give me the rules. I'm here to tell you, you were right as a teenager. And it's exactly the attitude we need right now. There's a guy by the name of Dario Amodei. He's the CEO of Anthropic, this giant tech conglomerate, creator of Claude, a massive AI language model. And from everything I've been reading recently, he's trying to be a decent person. He's trying not to be a crazy person. But he can't escape being one of the tech bros, being the CEO of Anthropic. But God bless the guy. He's standing up against Pete Hegseth and the U.S. Department of War Crimes because they're dangling this huge project in front of him. This is how they operate. The United States government is the largest spender in the world, and as such, they think they've got leverage, and it works more often than not. They're telling Anthropic, you're going to lose this big, juicy contract unless you agree to our terms. And those terms? AI must be allowed to make decisions, wartime decisions, without human input, because it's faster, it's more efficient. Anthropic is pushing back. No, you can't let AI give a kill order. Person has to do that. Your government is fighting him, insisting that he allow his technology to kill human beings without any input from a human being. This is how crazy these people are. They're also insisting on mass surveillance systems, the likes of which no one has ever seen before. That's the one Orange Menace tick that is very useful these days. He has one or two iterations of that phrase. Like no one's ever seen, like no one could ever believe. Yeah, it's a useful phrase these days. The capacity for surveillance is at a level we haven't seen. And the Department of War Crimes wants to use it. And I guess if they can't convince Amodei and Anthropic, he's got competitors. They'll find somebody else. Bezos, Musk, Peter Thiel, they'll find somebody to agree that not allowing AI to launch weapons on its own is too woke. People are too slow. Computers can bomb enemies faster, so we must let them. Yeah, we were right all along. The people in charge are insane. And I think it's very important that we reclaim that attitude and that we act accordingly. The Epstein Files. There can be no doubt that the regime's Department of Injustice is engaged in a massive cover-up. Of course they are. That's not even in question anymore. People in the media are very careful not to say it because there are laws. You can be sued. You can lose your broadcast license for breaking libel laws. So I suppose I'm supposed to be careful here. Well, let me think, how can I be careful? The President of the United States has been credibly accused of being a child rapist. I don't know if that's true. But, in my opinion, it's impossible to believe that he's not a disgusting, despicable rapist. The single most abhorrent thing you can be. The second most abhorrent thing you can be is Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and everyone else protecting him and his friends. And the people in charge are questioning Hillary Clinton? This is pure insanity. Right in front of our noses, ICE, CBP, DHS continue. The most recent case that made the news, 56-year-old Rohingya refugee in Buffalo, New York. Guy by the name of Shah Alam. Doesn't speak English, is functionally blind, can't use a cell phone, doesn't even know his family's phone number, according to the family. Was left in the middle of nowhere, just dropped off miles from home at some cheap white trash fast food restaurant. Just left by DHS after a year of internment, just left on his own, in the middle of nowhere. Doesn't speak English, he's blind, can't use a cell phone, doesn't know where he is. They find him dead just days later, just laying in the ditch after DHS agents just kicked him out of the car. There you go. Held him for a year for no reason. Released him just to die. If anybody at this point expects us all to just behave, to respect our leaders, to respect authority, to trust the system, no, absolutely not. And now there are serious threats against our voting rights. So-called reasonable people have been telling us now for months, oh, don't worry, the states are in charge of elections. The Orange Menace can't really take over the elections like he's threatening. Says you. There are a lot of things he can't do legally. Well, he has no legal right. Of course he doesn't. Who cares? What's that got to do with it? He's threatening now a sweeping presidential executive order to incorporate everything in the SAVE Act that can't pass because they don't have enough Republicans in Congress. But with one fat, sharpie, smudgy signature, he's going to try to steal the right to vote from millions and millions of Americans. Oh, he can't do it. Who says he can't? You don't think he can get away with that? Look at what he's gotten away with so far. Who's going to stop him? The Democrats? The courts? The Republicans? Pfft. I encourage all of us. It is absolutely time to display, to exercise, to voice your utter and complete disdain to the people who call themselves leaders. On all these issues, and especially this voting rights issue, you need to get on the phone, even better, get in your car, go to their office. You need to absolutely demand that election officials, people in city, county, and state government, the ones closest to you, the ones where you can drive to their office and knock on their door, and you tell them with your full Spicoli attitude, hey man, don't take away my vote. Because at this point, the only thing that will stop the fascists is our insistence. And the people in your city council, and your county commissions, and your state boards, the so-called officials closest to you, have to hear from you today. And they have to know that you demand that they stand up against the fascists. They are the wall. And we got to lay this thing brick by brick. So I'm asking you today, reclaim your inner teenager. Understand that the people in charge are all stupid and weak. Don't bother to give them an ounce of respect because they don't deserve it. And you tell them how it's going to work from here on out. All right, so let's get into a little bit of detail here on voting. I've been promising this for a while. There are two elements to this story that you need to understand. One is what the Washington Post reported recently and what everybody's losing their minds about, and that is that the regime, the Miller-Vogt regime, is actively pursuing strategies to rig the midterms. And we've been talking about this for years. We've been talking about this since long before the Orange Menace won his second term. That if you let him get anywhere near the White House again, it's going to be the last meaningful election. They'll find a way, a la Putin, a la Orban, to have elections that don't mean anything. And then the second is the SAVE Act, which we've mentioned a couple of times, but I've been kind of putting off because Congress doesn't have the votes to pass it. So I wasn't too worried about it. But, okay, let's talk about voting. The reason we have to pressure local elections boards, your city councils, county commissions, state legislators, you got to pressure the people closest to you, is because they're the only ones that can actually pull the trigger. And they're going to be getting enormous pressure from the regime. According to the Washington Post reporting, there's a 17-page draft executive order that's been circulating that claims China interfered with the 2020 election. One of the couple of reasons he's so obsessed with the 2020 election. Obviously because he lost, that's strictly ego. But Russell Vogt and other luminaries like a guy named Hans von Spakovsky and Ken Cuccinelli. These are names you might have heard of. If not, you probably will. In other words, the people that actually have brains and know how to do this thing, they know how to pull the levers. This is their strategy to rig or possibly literally postpone or cancel the midterms. I know it sounds crazy. What are we talking about here? We're talking about crazy people. So yeah, declare a national emergency. One of the regime's favorite little tactics. They've done it several times now. They do it whenever there's any kind of protest on the streets regarding ICE. They've done it over tariffs. Yeah, it's a way to get around the law. So you declare a national emergency, give the president even more power, which is what they're all about, the unitary executive. This guy I mentioned, Hans von Spakovsky, senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation, former member of the Federal Election Commission, and he authored the section on election reform, I put that in quotes, in Project 2025. And there he detailed things like purging the voter rolls. You know, they've requested voter information from every state. I think they've gotten them from almost half. Others are resisting. Any way for the regime to get inside the system. This is what the Dodgy Boys were all about. This is what Palantir is all about. Getting inside systems. In this case, purge voters from the rolls. Find any excuse. Especially targeting non-citizens, which has been documented over and over again as an invented problem. It's been calculated that voter fraud rate stands at 0.000003%. They're inventing a problem. I mean, this is standard procedure. Inventing a problem that doesn't exist to create solutions that don't solve any problem except their own problem of not being able to win elections fairly. They've already rescinded Biden policies, especially those that promote voter registration. The Orange Menace has said many times, you've heard it, I'm sure, doesn't want absentee ballots at all, doesn't want any mail-in voting. If they can't go to that extreme, they're going to certainly restrict any sort of mail-in or absentee ballots. Their ideas call for the Department of Justice to be much more involved, as we saw in Georgia, as they raided and absconded with Fulton County's voter information. So this idea the DOJ would take a much more active role in investigating so-called election crimes. Again, crimes that don't exist. Voter registration fraud that doesn't exist. All just to get inside systems. The aforementioned Ken Cuccinelli, who's been in and out of the regime and its inner circle, also heavily involved in the current conversations. He wrote the Project 2025 chapter on the Department of Homeland Security and is especially enthusiastic about hardline immigration policies, especially as they relate to election-related policies. And I'm sure I don't have to remind you of what happened in the 2020 election, how Cuccinelli and others were involved in the schemes to stop vote counts, to confiscate voting machines, to establish fake slates of electors. All of this well documented, all of this, according to Jack Smith, ready for prosecution. He had the case in the bag. He was convinced. but the unforgivable delay of Merrick Garland prevented those election crimes from being prosecuted. We don't have to go through all that again. The point here is that it's a deja vu all over again. Everything they attempted in their first run-through, they've now had several years to perfect, find just the right cast of characters to pull it off. Because they didn't have it last time. They had Bill Barr as Attorney General. Now they have Pam Bondi. They have everybody in place. This is an Ocean's 11 kind of deal. They got the whole team together. Now, the SAVE Act is relevant here because even though, as I've said several times, they haven't got the votes, but the ideas are still there, and it's exactly the kind of thing that the regime will try to push through with some massive executive order. It won't be legal, of course. That doesn't matter. They just have to put it together, basically write a brand new law, fill it with everything on their wish list, have him smudge the Sharpie signature. The courts can knock it down all they want. The courts don't have an army to stop him. He'll do it anyway. And if this was 15, 20, 30 years ago, well, maybe 50 years ago, I'm not sure how far we have to go back, Congress would step in, say, well, if you're going to defy the courts, we'll have to impeach you. Of course, that's not on the table anymore because of the current makeup of the Republican Party, which is an illegitimate political party. It's basically a crime syndicate. They have partnered with the regime to commit crimes against the Constitution on a daily. So by the time this executive order is put together, I'm sure it will include all of the provisions of the SAVE Act, which makes registering to vote a nightmare because you have to prove your citizenship now, even though it's a 0.0000003% chance of a problem in that regard. So you have to have a passport, which about half of Americans don't have. And it costs like $150 or more. Driver's license isn't enough anymore. It's got to be a driver's license with a real ID and the passport and a birth certificate because you got to prove the citizenship. If you can't find that, well, you can track it down, pay another $15, $20 to get a duplicate birth certificate if you can find it at all. 2 proofs of residence. Okay, Social Security card do that? I guess maybe that'll be one. What's the other one? Well, maybe you can track down a paper utility bill. I don't know if they'll take a printout of your online bill. It's just a nightmare. And it really hits the fan here when you're talking about married women, because the name on their birth certificate will be different from the name on their other documents. Because at least half of women, they still change their names when they get married. So, okay, just go find proof of the name change. Marriage certificate? Yeah, that's in our book. Oh, turns out that was just a souvenir. It's not official. Okay, well, I got to go to the courthouse then. Find the actual marriage certificate with the raised seal and all. There'll be another fee for that, $10 probably, more. What if you've been married more than once? I know a lot of women have been married more than once. Twice, 3 times. Repeat the process. Go to each different courthouse in each different city or state, depending on where you were at the time. Spend hours on the phone. Spend hours on the road. Get nickeled and dimed to death every time you need a duplicate certificate. And if you think that real ID on your driver's license is going to take care of things, nope, it's not. It does not meet the SAVE Act's requirements. You need that passport. You need that birth certificate. You need that marriage license, if that applies to you. Men don't have to worry about that part of it, of course. Not a problem for men. This is a special problem for trans folks. All of this ID business pretty much disenfranchises every trans person, most non-binary or gender-diverse voters. Because if you have to go back and get birth certificates or passports, it's very likely it's not going to match your current ID exactly. There are name changes. There are gender identification differences. Under the SAVE Act or under this malicious presidential executive order, trans and non-binary people are screwed. Unless they can go through all the hassle, spend hours, days, hundreds of dollars to track down the necessary documents, if they even exist, to the satisfaction of the crooks and liars sitting behind the desk trying to make you prove who you are. According to some estimates, at least 20 million eligible voters will be at risk, with trans voters among the most targeted. It's pretty clear that some people have a target on their back. people of color, people with an accent, people who look a certain way, women, trans people. But once more, Russ Vought and the Orange Menace and their Ocean's 11 team in the White House cannot do this without the cooperation of local authorities, the people who run the elections. They're going to be pressured. They're going to be told by the regime, this is the law you must follow. In fact, that's something I didn't mention, something from the SAVE Act provides for harsh criminal penalties to election officials who do not follow the law. So your neighbors who run the elections are going to be threatened with jail, even though the laws they're expected to enforce are blatantly unconstitutional. Without the checks and balances of a second and third branch of government, there's no one to protect them. So don't let anyone tell you that the regime can't get away with this. They absolutely can. And that's why we have to make all the noise we possibly can with our local officials, with our state legislators, with our U.S. representatives. Let them know that we know exactly what's happening right now. This is a dire situation. The midterms are under serious threat. So make sure your local election officials know you have their back. If you have the time, the ability to become an election official, they always need people. There's a shortage. They're always hiring. They're always taking volunteers. If you're able to do that, yeah, get inside the room and fight for democracy, if you can. The days of counting on so-called leaders to do the right thing, those days are gone. We need a broad, sweeping army of citizen activists and volunteers. Power is never given. We have to just rise up and take it. We looked up the exact quote from John Lennon that I paraphrased earlier. 1968, John Lennon said, "I think all our society is run by insane people for insane objectives. I think we're being run by maniacs for maniacal ends, and I think I'm liable to be put away as insane for expressing that. That's what's insane about it." Yeah. We are giving far too much deference to our so-called leaders. No. And now the latest glaring example, the bombing of Iran. You know, I always talk about the Miller-Vought regime. I think there's some new partners in the firm here. It's now the Miller-Vought Netanyahu regime. What the hell has Netanyahu got on the Orange Menace anyway? We know that Epstein was up to his neck in Israeli intelligence. Who knows what kind of blackmail is going on there? So it's the Miller-Vought Netanyahu Epstein regime. And then add his real estate buddy Witkoff, who's playing every angle in the Middle East for his own financial ends. Real estate, crypto, with his son, and of course Don Jr. and Eric. So I guess all the partners in the regime then, it's the Miller-Vought Netanyahu Epstein Witkoff and Sons regime. War with Iran? The new firm thinks that it'll improve their poll numbers? It'll help in the midterms? What are they thinking? Distract from the economy? Distract from ICE raids? Distract from the Epstein files? To please their new Gulf Arab buddies? There's the Witkoff and Sons angle, the real estate, the crypto. But I like to employ Occam's razor whenever I can, where the correct answer is usually the simplest. And that is that they're all fucking morons, especially the orange meat puppet. So let me just give you some of my thoughts here on the Iran thing. This is twice now that they've used negotiations as a ruse, as a psych. They did it back in June, they did it again. Witkoff, Jared Kushner. Oh yeah, I didn't mention Jared. I guess he's included in the Sons. Yeah, in the partnership. Yeah, they've done that twice now, right in the middle of negotiations. Psych, bombs. The president of peace has now bombed 8 different nations in less than a year. The death toll from the girls' elementary school, the last I saw, 148. Nobody's crying for the Iranian regime, least of all the Ayatollah. But do we want to live in a world where assassinating leaders is the new norm? Do I want Iran to fly over here and drop a bomb on the White House? No. Should Canada attack us and wipe out the leadership? Hegseth? Joint Chiefs? The president? No, of course not. Nobody wants to live in that world. It's wrong. It's immoral. It's dangerous. And it's stupid. Somebody in the administration was quoted as saying, "We cut off the head of the snake." What? How stupid are these people? It's not a snake, it's a hydra. You cut one head off, two grow back. Ah, but the people of Iran will rise up. It will be yours to take, he says. What? How? Morons. And now we've got this sort of Dr. Strangelove doctrine in effect. Well, going in first, a preemptive strike is a very, very bad idea. But if we do, once you do, then you're all in. That's the Dr. Strangelove doctrine. Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. That wasn't the exact quote from the Orange Meat Puppet, but it was virtually the same as that quote by Lord Farquaad in the movie Shrek. The Strait of Hormuz, I'm not sure if it's open or closed at the moment, but certainly in jeopardy. So I guess you better fill up your tank before gas prices double, if they haven't already. According to Axios, General Dan Kane, head of the Joint Chiefs, was the only military leader briefing the Orange Menace on Iran. So no military voices in the room except for Kane, who opposed the attack on Iran. Yeah, the president of peace. Do you remember what he said to the Prime Minister of Norway? "Considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars, plus, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace." So millions of people, the entire region, now in danger. That includes tens of thousands of Americans, not to mention the 24 military bases. But as I've said all along, he's a chicken hawk. He's a sucker puncher. And even though he's drunk with power, I don't think he's got the nerve for a protracted war. That's kind of what I'm counting on. He just wants his little easy work-from-home war. And again, he does it from Mar-a-Lago, for God's sakes. He puts up that high-security black fabric hung on aluminum poles. What a joke. These people are idiots. I mean, does he think he can Venezuela Iran? He doesn't think that. Is he that stupid? Are the people around him that stupid? That there's a Delcy Rodriguez in Iran they can hold a gun to, and they'll do whatever they say? What are they thinking? And not to mention the whole damn thing is unconstitutional and violates international law. So he and Netanyahu are just adding to their rap sheets as international war criminals. Add it to the list. Well, we'll keep an eye on this thing, see where it goes. I think the fear-mongering about another 20 years war in the Middle East is kind of ridiculous. But, who knows? All right. Well, like I say, we'll keep an eye on it. Thanks for listening. This and all episodes can be heard at the website, charlespurcell.com, or on your favorite podcast platform. Thanks to our flagship terrestrial station, River West Radio in Milwaukee. Follow us on Blue Sky and Substack. Peter Donalds wrote and performed our theme song. All right. I love you. I'll see you out there.